bill.
I want to see if it pops up out loud.
Husband's phone number and said just working on it all the time. So a little bit, and clearly this ended up being a huge dragged up this hill by this guy. She realized her lives would fear. She finally decides that it's quite a house. Mary Catherine kept telling them that she definitely wasn't in the house. I mean, they were searching everywhere. At this point, they knew Elizabeth was gone, and her mom just fell to the ground.
Ew, why did he tag me in this? This is me in orange. Come here. Come here.
No, why you still wait? Let me start. Wait.
So they were letting the family stay in the house. They were bringing all these people over, all these family members, and they were all walking through the house, just destroying the crime scene.
I was just blown away. I've never seen a crime scene that was so totally contaminated.
And since it was so late at night, and this is the graveyard shift with a lot of new officers and experienced officers are working, they had no idea how to handle this scene. Nothing was tipped off, they weren't keeping a log of who was coming and going, and when an experienced officer got there, they were like, what the hell are you guys doing? There's all these people in here. And at this point, they're thinking, is it possible that someone in the family could have done this? Maybe this is a cover-up for a murder. So they had to bring all of the members of the family down to the police station in separate police cars and question them. They brought a cadaver dog back to the house to search, didn't find anything, and their family was just totally distressed, being separated after this horrific couple of hours that they had had. Especially Mary Catherine, she's just like by herself and talking to police. She starts telling them what she remembers. It was quite a bit. She said that he was a white man.
I will never ever again.
This man said that he was kidnapping for ransom money. So after they interviewed her and they learned a little bit
we was
more
outside of a fucking skate. We was outside of a skating rink. I'm talking about. I just moved like.
They felt like they were wasting all of their time doing the wrong things, and this was precious time that they should be out searching for Elizabeth. And they even made them wait 3 hours to put out any photos of Elizabeth or any alerts like that. And this is crazy because 65% of children who are kidnapped are killed within the first 3 hours. So that is crucial time. They just made them wait for no reason. Every second matters in a situation like this. I understand having suspicion about the family, but you should also be doing everything you can actively to search for a missing child at the same time. And they just weren't doing that. And after they cleared the family, they left incredibly frustrated with the police. And this would just be the start of their frustration. They went to the media, and of course they were interested. A missing white girl in Utah gets stolen from her bed. Like, people were very interested. It'd be wonderful if every missing child got coverage like this, but Elizabeth definitely got a lot. Her photo was all over the news. They were covering it pretty much constantly locally, and pretty much the whole community knew about this case the next day. Meanwhile, Elizabeth is hiking this mountain with Brian, and they're almost to the top. Elizabeth happened to be wearing bright red PJs that night, and as the sun started coming out, Brian started freaking out that people were going to be able to see her
I want to see if it says it out loud.
She said specifically that she looked like a red flame, and that if there were any runners,
tell me if you hear it too.
Maybe they would spot her. Eventually, they made it to his secret camp. He had all set up.
You see how it moves around with me now?
And as they approach the camp, he starts telling her that his wife is waiting for them. And Elizabeth starts thinking, maybe he's not going to just kill me. Maybe this is a couple that has never been able to have a baby and they want
Did you hear it?
a kid or something. She said she started getting a little bit more hope for her future at this point. When they got to the camp area, there were tarps set up on the ground and a tent. And as they started approaching the campsite, this woman appears out from behind a tree. And she was wearing these long linen robes and a headdress. This woman walked up to Elizabeth, gave her a hug, and Elizabeth said it was a really hard hug, kind of a controlling hug. And this woman is Wanda Barzee, Brian's wife. Wanda then took Elizabeth into the tent and started washing her feet. She then told Elizabeth to undress and put on a robe. Obviously this was she undressed, put the robe on, and sat down on this bucket in the tent. Wanda left her there crying alone and terrified.
I had just sunken into complete hopelessness, despair.
And then Brian came back into the tent and started performing some type of marriage ceremony on her. As Elizabeth just sat there sobbing, he said that Elizabeth was now his wife in the eyes of Jesus Christ. And then he said, we now have to consummate our marriage. And Elizabeth, even though she was young, she was pretty sure she knew what that meant and was terrified that was going to happen to her, especially because it was so important in her faith to maintain your virginity. This was incredibly hard for her. I mean, after this happened, she felt like she had lost everything. Like she was not even a worthy person because she did not have her virginity anymore. This was so scary to her. She said after it happened that she thought about all the other children that were murdered by their captors, and she said for a moment she felt like they were the lucky ones. But she was in hell on earth and couldn't escape. She thought, they're in heaven right now, and I wish I could be there. After this all had happened, she lay there for a little while and eventually decided that she was going to run. As soon as she had the opportunity, she went bolt out of there. She had to get up her energy first. She had just hiked this whole mountain. Imagine the adrenaline that would be going off the entire time through something like this. So she was exhausted and took a nap. And she decided that when she woke up, she was just going to bolt. But unfortunately, when she woke up, she saw Brian in front of her. And he was tying her leg up with a metal cord. He had tied it around her ankle and it was connected to a tree. So her hope of running was, at this point, she could only move 20 feet in any direction. And she would have that as her entire world for weeks. For weeks on it. And at this point, she was just feeling so hopeless. Meanwhile, her parents are obviously still freaking out back at home. Her mother was barely hanging on. Honestly, both parents were just absolutely stunned that this could happen to their daughter, to their family. Neither of them were sleeping at all. They were crying constantly to the point where they almost could barely see. Lois said that she would try to stay really strong during the day for the other kids, but at night she would just fall apart. At this point, Ed and Lois were told that it was crucial for them to make a public statement themselves and kind of appeal to the community. Hopefully this would get people to join the search efforts, get people to be on the lookout for Elizabeth. You know, media coverage always helps. Lois decided she was too emotional to do this, understandably, so Ed was the one to do it.
Elizabeth, if you're out there, we're doing everything we possibly can to help you. We love you. We want you to come home safe.
Let us
to us.
And luckily, this worked. A lot of people really felt his pain. Tons of people ended up coming out to support the family.
We just can't
fuck around,
fathom
leave now.
who it is
I'm
or
not
why
going
they
anywhere
took
without
her.
Robert.
We can't believe that it's really happened.
Bash your skull.
So they
He's
were
called her a
hopeful
bitch. Oh, God.
that maybe with enough prayers and enough support and people searching, they could bring Elizabeth home. Back at the camp, Elizabeth is getting used to being chained up all the time. This camp had now become her prison, and she wasn't even that far away from her house. And all day, she just had to listen to Brian and Wanda, ramble about some black ass shit that they were doing out of nowhere, repeating things out of the Bible. Brian would just literally say things that he hadn't heard, and he thought they made him sound wise. And he ended up telling Elizabeth that he was an Israelite and a Davidic king, which means that he was part of the bloodline of the Hebrew Messiah. He said that he would emerge in 7 years, be stoned by a mob, lie dead in the streets for 3 days, and then rise up to kill the Antichrist. And he filled her in on his whole plan, how Elizabeth was part of it, and God wanted all of this to happen. And Elizabeth was just going to be one of many brides that Brian was hoping to acquire. Eventually, he wanted Elizabeth to take on a new identity, to completely forget who she was, and he made her pick a name out of the Bible.
Oh, yes.
The name Esther. And throughout her kidnapping,
You still watching?
in so many ways, she was obviously physically assaulted,
Good.
she was raped, she was not given water, not given food, basic nourishment.